Folks, I feel like I have to make this video for the good of the community at this point. I have seen the silencing and the toxicity of E4 now spill over to the Pokemon investment community with none other than Jake from Pokenomics. I know. So Jake had a live stream recently with Sean from Reserved Investments. They were having a battle to see who was the biggest bear in the hobby, I guess. I don't know. I was in the chat giving the devil's advocate side of the argument, right? I was giving my, thoughts on what they were discussing. And then I found myself banned from the chat, silenced. I saw Dan was the only mod there at that time, Catch 'em All Collectibles. So I reached out to him on Instagram because me and Dan talk. And I said, hey, Dan, what's up? Did you ban me for some reason? He said, no, I've been listing cards and trying to, pay attention at the same time. What happened? I've never banned anyone from Jake's chat or my own chat ever. Oh, okay. So I logged on on my personal account, got back in the chat, and said a couple more things, and then poof, banned again. This time I saw Jake's, mouse moving around, and I could tell it was him. I also saw around this time other people who shared my mindset begin to just mysteriously stop posting as well. Now, maybe they just decided to leave the chat, or whatever, but it was a little weird. So I can't prove other people were banned, but I definitely was. The next day I reached out to Jake on Instagram trying to be civil. Hey, why'd you ban me twice? And he saw it and no response. And so I feel like it's finally time to make this video. One, because of the silencing, because I think it's bad for the hobby when you don't let other viewpoints discuss things. But two, because I think the reason for his silencing is a little darker than just the silencing. So Jake touts himself as an expert in investing in collectibles and investing in general, basically. So much so that he has a Patreon that he charges a monthly premium for to hundreds of people, and it ends up being thousands of dollars every single month for his advice, his expert advice. What makes Jake such an expert? Well, he got into Pokemon around the same time I did, a little earlier than me. He had a large inheritance from a family member. He's mentioned this in a live stream before. He had a large inheritance that was invested in the stock market, and when he became an adult, he decided he wanted to take a large portion of that money out and invest it into Pokemon. Again, I invested a lot in Pokemon back then. A lot of people did. We all made a lot of money in the boom. I think we all got lucky, right? I made hundreds of thousands of dollars. Jake obviously made millions. And because he made so much off of that money inherited that he took out of the stock market and put into Pokemon, he became known as this expert in the Pokemon collectible space. The issue I have is all the advice he's given on his YouTube channel since then, a lot of it's been wrong and it's been misrepresented. And he has either lost people money or had people miss out on tons, hundreds of % in gains by the advice he's given. Now, every time I call him out on this advice in his live stream chats or when I'm on his channel or when he's been on mine, he constantly tells me he's never said that. I'm putting words in his mouth. I took his words wrong. So what I'm going to do, I went back through all of his 2-3 years here on YouTube. I found live streams and videos he put out, and I have his exact words on what he said, the advice he's given out that a lot of people, thousands of people are listening to. Hundreds of people out there are actually paying for it on Patreon every single month, which equates to thousands of dollars. And so I'm making this video to help people because, one, they're not seeing all sides of the view if they're just listening to Jake's channel because he silences the people who don't see the way he does. Or he'll have people on and he'll completely overtalk them. He'll make ridiculous arguments like, oh, well, 90 sports cards, Beanie Babies, comic books, they did this, so obviously it's dumb to, think Modern's going to do anything different. Whatever. But we're going to jump into this. I'm going to show you his exact investing advice, and that way you can make up your own mind if you are one of his Patreons, if you want to continue to pay that monthly premium, or if you take advice from his channel, if you should continue to going forward. So let's start off.
You were wrong about Modern. So,
okay, that one's just for fun. Say you were wrong about Modern. Crickets. All right, let's move on. All right, so this is from a live stream over 2 years ago. Actually, almost 3 years ago. It was kind of right during the boom, before everything went crazy, before evolutions went from $100 a box to $1,000, and all the Modern stuff went nuts. This is what he was saying.
versus sealed modern product. So I talked about my feelings generally on modern already. I think that it's, I guess I'd refer you to sort of my modern video when I talked about like how to make money off of modern, which I think covered all those topics there. But what I would do, again, like I just don't think that's the area you should be trying to make money or investing in the long term in Pokemon. Like I think modern is for fun.
You should not be looking to make money or invest in modern just for fun. His words, his video, his channel. Let's move on. Another stream over 2 years ago.
My prediction, and if we look at other collectibles,
I'm sure you've heard Jake say if you watch his channel many times, he doesn't make predictions. He's making one right now, so listen closely.
Every kid today, every kid in 20 years, every kid in 40 years is going to want the high-end collector is going to want Wizards of the Coast, is going to want the original first appearance of Charizard. And that's going to be the most expensive. That's going to be the most sought after. And they're just going to print more and more Charizards and more crazy colored Charizards, but they're never going to be able to print another, original. So that's the stuff that I'd be thinking about, and the reason why, with anything modern, I would sell it, right, to take the profit.
This was over 2 years ago, during the boom. He said to be thinking about vintage product because that's what people were going to go after, and to sell your modern. So, if you would have taken that advice, you would have most likely lost money on vintage, maybe been even, maybe a little up depending on what you bought. You would have for sure lost probably 100+% on most modern boxes if you would have taken that advice 2 years ago. You would have missed out on hundreds of percent return. From Jake's own words. I didn't put words in his mouth. He said it. He said it. Moving on. This is his first live stream with reserved investments over a year ago.
But just everyone is doing it. Not only do you have a lot more supply, but you have a lot of people not opening them as much because the price is a lot higher. And when you see the card values go down and the expected value go down in the box, that provides even more incentive to not open the box.
Correct.
All of that is going to push the prices down, potentially crash them in some.
So, all the reasons we've always heard before about modern, right? There's too much of it. Everyone's doing it. By the way, I've been hearing that since XY. I heard it all through Sun and Moon. We've heard it all through Sword and Shield. Everyone's doing it. There's way too much product printed. Everyone's putting it away and not opening it. The expected value for opening it isn't there, so why would anyone ever want to buy it and open it? Blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing. These people regurgitate the same thing over and over, and it's never right. They're just hoping that some mystical day in the future it's finally going to be right and everything's going to crash and they can come out and say, I told you so. It's not right. So if you've been taking this advice for these past 2-3 years, you've been missing out on hundreds of percent return, and you've probably been losing money on vintage listening to people like Jake. Let's move on.
I think a lot of cold water needs to be poured on certain, and I don't think you're making those arguments necessarily, but and I pour that cold water because I want people to enjoy the hobby and collect those items because they enjoy them, and at least take in my arguments and probably not invest in those types of things. I don't even think people necessarily should be investing in vintage, and that's a whole nother thing. And
So you shouldn't be investing in modern. He doesn't even think you should invest in vintage. This is someone who has over $1 million invested into Pokemon. So he's putting over $1 million of his own money in Pokemon, holding it, not selling it, and telling you and me not to invest in modern and not to invest in vintage. Again, his own words on his own videos on his own channel. Let's move on. This is my first live stream I had with Jake right when my channel kind of first started. Pokemart USA, Eli, my boy's in there. If you don't know who Eli is, check out his channel. It's Pokemart USA. Show him some love. He's got a lot of great content. Northwoods, man, me and him were on sort of good terms, but then he really kind of shifted and joined that group of like Jake and Mason Cardinal Gaming and that big echo chamber. He's made a lot of negative response videos to my content, and then when I've tried to comment back on those videos, he deletes my comments, so he's kind of part of that silencing I've been talking about here on YouTube that now Jake's partaking in. And so, yeah, I know I wish I wouldn't have seen him go down that road, but that's the path he's chosen as well. So that's a conversation for another day. So if you would have consistently bought Pokemon like an index fund, I don't think there's any period, any 5-year, 10-year period where you can point to right now that hasn't outproduced the stock market. I mean, XY, Sun and Moon, now we're moving into Sword and Shield. If you look at Eli and Northwoods, they're both shaking their heads yes. They both agree. They know the numbers. Jake's the only one that doesn't. I mean, Sword and Shield base, Guardian or Rebel class, they're already, 200 or more? So, I mean,
So that's not true. I'm actually going to show it in my video with numbers because it's one of these things that you have to show with numbers.
Yep. So, surprise, surprise, you can go back and look at his channel. That video never came. He never came out with a video showing how the stock market, the S&P funds would have performed better than Pokemon in a 5 or 10 year period. And the reason that video never came out, I'm just guessing, is because he started to do it and he realized the numbers were not in his favor. So he didn't want to put it out because he doesn't want the information to get out more that, hey, Pokemon's outperforming.
Yeah. It's definitely true for some of your high performers, like some of those ETBs and like some items that we saw 100%. So you have sort of 3 categories, I think of, Alex. Like I think of your sort of high flyer, 10 to 20 to 30 Xers, and you did see some sealed product do that. Then you have sort of your like 3 to 5 Xers, which were kind of like most of like the Sun and Moon block, a lot of XY boxes, 3 to 5X in sort of your 5-year period. And then you have your boxes or your ETBs that got reprints that ended up not moving at all or moving very, very slight, or some of your poor sets that really only went from $85 to $160 or $170. And depending on which one you look at and which time frame you're looking at, because the stock market has tripled, in a lot of the periods we're talking about the stock market, these index funds have tripled, quadrupled. And then when you add,
remember this, okay, I'm going to show you in a second, but the stock market has tripled and quadrupled in the same time frame. We're talking modern. We're talking XY, Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield. We're talking sub 10 years, sub 5 years for a lot of it. Remember that.
There's so much money printed and everything is so high that I think it can be easy to sort of lose track, I think, of how much money you could have made in index funds if you out there have not been putting money in index funds. Now, there isn't any, there's no guarantee that that's going to continue. That could fall 40% in, any day. And I do think there's an argument to be made that in some ways that's actually, funny enough, like more risky, at least in the short term, than actually buying like a modern booster box at $72, because I think there could be a little bit more of a floor. I think it's less likely that, believe it or not, that falls 40% than some of my like Berkshire Hathaway stock, just given.
So I just wanted to let it go that far to show you that he mentions Berkshire Hathaway stock. So he says he owns Berkshire Hathaway. In other videos, I couldn't find it. I remember it though. He talks about owning large amounts of Berkshire Hathaway. And so there's 2 different shares of Berkshire Hathaway, A shares and B shares. I'm almost positive he doesn't own the 476,000 a share A shares. I'm pretty sure he owns the B shares. Again, don't know, but it doesn't matter because if you look, even though the dollar amounts are different, it's around the same percentage gain no matter which shares you own of Berkshire Hathaway. And so I'm just going to show you this. Berkshire Hathaway does not give you a dividend to own the stock, so you don't get anything to own the stock. 5 years ago, it was at 191 a share. Now it's at 312. That's it. About 60, maybe 70% gain is all you made in 5 years in Berkshire Hathaway. Barely over 10% a year. This is what Jake does with his money that he thinks is a solid investment over Pokemon. Okay? He also talked about 10 years. Okay? So I'm going to show you 10 years. This is all of XY, Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, okay? 10 years ago would be March 2013, okay? So 10 years ago, Berkshire Hathaway was at 104 a share. Now it's at 312. You're talking about only 200% in 10 years you would have made. That's 20% a year. Very good compared to some other stocks and other, funds. But again, 20%. Not even Warren Buffett can beat Pokemon. And then I'm going to show you the S&P. He talks about the market, index funds. Worse. 2,700 the S&P, now at 4,100. All right? Worse than Berkshire Hathaway. Go back 10 years, it's even worse. Okay? 1,600 to 4,100, not even 200%. Even in the biggest run-up of the S&P, you're not making anywhere close to what you're making in Pokemon. And I'm guessing that's the reason he never made that video comparing the two, because he realized he was wrong. Moving on. I got a couple more. Stick with me here. This is important. This is important to watch.
Saying
this is fun.
You would never touch an Evolutions box or Burning Shadows box, like all those boxes that I made a lot of money on. You were saying no one should buy those.
I actually bought some at the $100 to $300, and
he just said in his earlier videos, do not buy Modern. Don't buy it. Don't invest in it. Sell it. If you own Modern, sell it. Now he's saying he bought those boxes between 1 and 300. He's also said multiple times, I would never buy over retail. I would never buy after they take off. Why were you buying at 1 to 300 then? You see all the conflicting advice he gives? This is the last video I have, okay? This is the last one. It's from our most recent live stream I was on with him. Ray, pay attention to him. I didn't know Ray before the stream. I still haven't talked to him after this yet. I plan to, because I think he has a lot of good knowledge, and I'd like to have him on the channel sometime. But Ray is Jake's friend. They know each other, okay? You're going to see how even Ray knows what I'm talking about is correct when Jake does not. And Jake, again, is supposed to be an expert. He charges for his opinions, so he should know this stuff. Listen.
then those booster boxes are down 20 to 30%, mostly across the board, right? After going up 8 to 10%.
He's talking about Modern booster boxes. They're down 20 to 30% since the boom.
8 to 10 times in value. Absolutely. Evolution, Team Up.
Some are higher.
Which ones are higher?
A good amount in Sun and Moon are actually higher. I know Evolution.
I was fairly certain they were all higher too, Alex. Yeah.
Wait, so okay, let me
They
ask
reached
you.
1,000. Evolutions was at 1,500. A couple sold 12.5. Team Up was selling for 1,300 at the top. That's like
Okay,
1,000.
Unbroken Bonds was never $600-700 a box back then.
I don't remember. I'd have to look it up.
It really wasn't, no.
Team Up was never this high.
And Unbroken Bonds had that reprint, right?
Shining Legends, I sold Shining Legends near the top back then, and Shining Legends is back to almost where it was then. A lot of Modern has already regained all of its losses, where Vintage has remained stagnant and kept all of its losses.
Again, I sold Vintage and didn't buy any because I didn't.
Now he sold Vintage, okay? So now he's saying he sold Vintage. Keep listening.
Think it was a good investment.
You said you have $1 million worth.
Yeah, okay, so you want to know what I did?
Yeah.
So I sold about.
All I'm going to say is, you see that pause and then that hesitation of, want to know what I did? That's what people do when they're trying to think of something in their mind, a response to come up with. When you put someone on the spot, they don't have an answer, right? Because they're trying to come up with something in their head. That's the kind of response you get. So I'm going to play it, but did you notice that?
30 to 40% of my stuff. Rebought a decent amount, but now I'm very heavy also in lots of other CCGs and TCGs and all sorts.
And then that's what Jake does as well. Then when he's caught, he'll take the conversation to something else. Like, oh, I'm in other TCGs and CCGs. I don't invest in Pokemon right now. But he said he didn't invest. He said he sold his Vintage. And then he says he still has $1 million in it. And then he says, I only sold 30 to 40%, then I bought some back. And there's just so much conflicting information. But every time I catch him in something in a stream, he'll just say, you're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say that. You can't say you didn't say it now, Jake. It's all over your channel within the spread of multiple years. And so my issue is, why would you silence someone with a different view when that view has remained correct? And two, why do you have a Patreon that you are charging people a monthly premium, hundreds of viewers, okay? You're charging them thousands of dollars a month for advice that has been wrong. So you're possibly taking them down a wrong road where they might be losing money, possibly, but they're 100% they've been missing out on a lot of gains. Absolutely. That's remained true this whole time. So that's the issue I have with what Jake is doing on his channel. I wouldn't have made this video if he wouldn't have silenced me, but these opinions, they need to get challenged, because if not, the people that don't find the other channels and the other parts of YouTube investing or Pokemon investing, and they get stuck on one person like Jake, they're going to get led down the wrong path if they don't ever hear other arguments, and they aren't able to come up with their own style of investing and put the money where they feel is going to be the best spot, instead of seeing someone that, oh, he's got a big collection in his background, he's got a big net worth in Pokemon, he's had a YouTube channel for X amount of years, he's been in the hobby for X amount of years. All those things combined make him this reliable source when the advice he's giving hasn't been reliable. So, sorry I had to make this video, Jake. You know, I don't know why you banned me. I reached out to you on Instagram. I don't know why you ignored me, but I feel like this video had to be made. So, I hope this helped everyone out there in their investing journey. As always, I'm sure everyone's going to let me know in the comment section on this one. I look forward to it. And you know I will not be deleting your comment if you want to leave a negative one. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all in a new video soon. I'm out.